probably seen countless stories of dramatic academic comebacks, the kind where you go from completely failing into suddenly overnight success. They're inspiring, right? But what if I told you that this is actually overrated?
Overrated, I'd say.
Now, this might sound strange coming from me because if you've been following me for a long while, you've seen that even this time last year, I posted a video that was called How to Have an Academic Comeback in 2024. And it's funny because that video ended up being my most popular one. So clearly, a lot of you are interested in the idea of an academic comeback. And hey, I totally get it. At that time, I fully convinced myself that academic comebacks are like the one thing that you need to have as a student, that you need to always achieve this. And once you have your academic comeback, that's it. You're gonna be good forever.
Yeah, I'm good.
And it's like this academic comeback would be a huge breakthrough moment for all of us. But here's the thing, after going through 4 academic comebacks, I myself now know that once you get an academic comeback, it's not a sure and final thing. You still have to be consistent, you still have to put in a lot of work. There's still a lot of things to do in order to maintain that academic comeback. I learned this the hard way when I went from an E to an A star in my IGCSEs, but then dropped back down to an E again for my AS levels, just to go back up again into an A. I had to retake everything for my A levels, and that was just so much time consuming. One of the days I literally had 5 exams and I couldn't write anymore. It honestly felt like climbing to the top of a mountain, glorifying the view, and then accidentally slipping all the way back down. So I wanted to revisit this topic and share about what I've learned since then. So if you're still chasing that academic comeback, I want you to stick around because I'm going to say something that will actually completely change your perspective. Everyone loves a good academic comeback story. It's like the hero story, where a main character of a movie goes through multiple challenges and against all odds finally achieve their dreams and reap the rewards. It's satisfying. It's almost like watching a miracle unfold itself, and who wouldn't feel satisfied by watching that? But you know what I love even more? Those after credit scenes where we actually see what the character is like after the story is supposed to be over, and we see them thriving in life. Seeing them build a life, maintain their success, and keep on growing, that's honestly the best part of every story. I learned that the truth is, a one-time comeback doesn't guarantee long-term success. If anything, the real work starts after the comeback itself. To keep that momentum going, it requires a solid system, a strategic workflow sustainable enough for you to do it all throughout the whole year and throughout your whole life. Because the hardest part isn't the comeback itself, it's staying consistent while you are already there. And trust me, I had to learn this the hard way. So as I told you before, during my IGCSEs, I went from an E to an A star. And this took a lot of effort, like literally a mountain full of effort, because I had to break down all of my previous beliefs about myself. Everybody told me that I was never going to be able to do this, I wasn't smart enough, blah, blah, blah. But I stuck through it, and that took a lot of rewiring of my own self-belief. Honestly, it felt incredible. It felt like I had finally cracked the code to academic success. I spent hours and hours figuring out my weaknesses, building up on my strengths. I discovered study techniques that worked so well that I was genuinely excited to use them again in future exams. The thought of pulling off another win felt like a thrill to me. Like, I honestly loved getting those good grades, and my self-worth was purely based on those good grades itself. If I failed again, I would be absolutely crushed, which happened in university, and that's another story for another time. I completely underestimated what would come next. I thought I had it all figured out, but when I stepped into my AS levels, I slipped right back down to an E and had to retake my exam. Looking back, I realized I overlooked something incredibly huge. I was so focused on giving 200% of my effort into that initial academic comeback, thinking that that was it. Once I reached that, I've reached the top, that's it. But what I didn't do was stop to think about what happens after. I thought, okay, once this exam is done, I'll just figure it out from then on. I've done it once, I can do it again. While that mindset served me for some time, it didn't serve me throughout my entire academic career. Because yes, I did it once, but what I did in my IGCSEs does not apply for what I will be doing in my A levels. It's also really easy to forget that when you're pushing yourself really hard, burnout isn't far behind us. We can only give so much before we start to feel sick of it all. Here's the thing, the strategies that I used in order to get me my A star were good for short bursts. But what I didn't consider was how I could use this in a sustainable way in a very long term. I assume I could just repeat the same intense process. Like, I'm a tutor now, and I hear a lot of my students say like, oh, during my GCSEs, I studied 3 days before and I was able to get a 6, I was able to get an 8, I was able to get a 9. And all of that seemed like, oh, studying is so easy. It kind of changed our whole perspective on how to study. It felt like something that was attainable, which is a good thing because then you get the grades at the end, but it won't be sustainable in the long term, because when you get to A levels, when you get to university, the level of studying that you need to do, the amount of hours that you need to put in completely changes. It's like triple the amount every single time. Those strategies needed follow-up strategies, a way to maintain the progress without burning out. And while that might sound like a lot of extra work, it's actually easier to manage once you realize that you're in this for the long term. I'll explain more about that later, but for now, just know that you're not alone. I've been through it. A lot of my students have been through it as well. So don't feel bad about not getting the grades that you want or burning out over your studies, because there's always a remedial action that you can do from all of these. Now, here's the biggest lesson I learned. Academic comebacks are temporary. It doesn't even have to be academic. Any comebacks are temporary if you don't put in the effort afterwards. And that's something we talked about already. If you don't have a plan to maintain this momentum, then it will be really, really easy for you to slip right back. It's like over COVID, I did a lot of workouts, I lost a load of weight, and I've been struggling with my weight all my life. And at that time, I lost a lot. But that was because I had nothing else to do. I was in my gap year. It was COVID. I couldn't leave the house. My family was struggling a little bit with finances, and I didn't want to eat a lot either because I wanted there to be enough food for everyone. So I didn't eat a lot. I exercised a lot, and it was really difficult for me to maintain weight, which never happened in my life. So I lost a load of weight at this time. But after COVID ended, I went back to the UK for university. I stopped exercising. I didn't have time. I ate the same amount I did previously because now I started to work by myself, had money to buy food, etc., etc. I gained it all back again. Now, studying is the same. I honestly see studying as if its own muscle. And to be fair, it's made from our brains, our neurons. So all of it is all about neuroplasticity anyways. The more you train it, the stronger it will get. But if you neglect it, the process starts to fade and you'll have to start all over again. From my experience, there are 3 key things that you need to remember in order to stay consistent and avoid falling back into your old previous habits. Firstly, you need to design a routine that fits for you. You want to design your own mold. You don't want to use somebody else's mold. You want it to fit your own vibe, fit your own schedule. So you want it to be personable to you. I know it sounds really basic, but honestly, most people don't even know how to do this. When I first started, I also didn't know how to do that. But once you know how to do this, you will actually enjoy your study process, and it becomes such a big game changer. If you hate the way you study, you'll avoid it. It's simple as that. For me, I realized that I needed to prioritize my fun time as compared to my schedule for studying time. So when I'm trying to make a study schedule, I don't really make it rigid. I just say I need to do this for this day, I need to do that for that day. I just have a list of things I need to do because life is constantly changing, and honestly, I just don't really work well when it comes to like a rigid schedule, and something changes, it messes everything up for me for the entire day. So instead, I just make a checklist of what I need to do. I don't fit my friends or my fun time with my family around my study schedule because then it feels like a chore. But if I prioritize the fun time, it makes studying less like a chore and actually makes it more fun. It feels to me now like a reward. But you may be the complete opposite. You may love multitasking at once, going out with your friends and studying on like a study date. Then you can do this in like cafes, libraries, things like that. Changing your environment when you are studying is always really helpful. And it actually really helps a lot with rewiring the way that you are thinking about your studying. Because when you're in a new environment, you can think of yourself as like the main character, for example. The key here is to design a system that works for you, not for anybody else, but for you. It's like when I make my own notes, like my notes, if somebody read it, no one will understand what I'm even trying to say because it's all in separate places. I have like multiple branches to everything. It's all in different colors. When people are seeing this, they're going to be like, I can't be bothered to read your notes. And it's happened so many times. But that's because I write my notes for me. I don't write it for somebody else. Secondly, it's not about motivation. It's only about discipline. Motivation can come and go really easily. I could wake up and be really motivated and be like, okay, today I'm going to get an A star. Okay, today I'm going to get 95% in my exam. I can say that. I can feel motivated. I can start studying. But if I'm not disciplined, if I don't do that every single day, then where's the spatial repetition? Where's the active recall? Where am I applying all of the study techniques that will actually help me to retain the memory memory. Remember when I said briefly about neuroplasticity? All of this is causing your brain to basically train itself to make new neurons and connect or rewire the neurons in your brain so that it can have more information stored. If you are not practicing all of this, it's like when you stretch a rubber band once, it's going to go back to its original shape. But if you keep stretching it, eventually the rubber band itself will be stretched. It will lose its plasticity. Now, I'm not saying that your brain will lose its plasticity, but I'm just saying that your brain will adopt this new shape, will adopt this new ability to memorize or understand even more. So the trick to focusing is to building your discipline. Now, how to build your discipline? This one's pretty simple. The main thing you want to do to build discipline is to create a routine of something you can do every single day. It depends on what you want to do, literally anything, just something small. It doesn't have to be large. Some people like doing their bed in the morning. I don't like doing that. I should probably start doing that, but I do not like doing that. What I do instead is I use a very specific pen for when I want to study. I will know, okay, it's time for me to study, or okay, it's time for me to do something. It's time for me to be productive because I've associated this particular pen or this particular color into studying, productivity, things like that. You want to associate something with discipline. You want to compartmentalize. That is the trick to become more disciplined without actually doing too much. You could even use music if you hear certain sounds. For example, when I first started, I used alarm system. So there's a specific alarm that I use for studying. As soon as I hear that, it means I need to study. And I've kind of like caused my body to feel a response to it, and if I don't study at that time, it feels really weird, so I condition myself to do it basically. You can also use music. If I hear classical music, it's time for me to do chemistry, something like that. Some days studying will feel effortless, while other days it's gonna feel like a tremendous hill you need to climb, and that's completely fine. You should take it day by day as long as you are still doing something. Number 3 is tracking your progress, even the small wins. One thing that really helped me to avoid burnout was giving myself reward systems afterwards. Sometimes it feels like you may be studying non-stop, but it's actually taking you nowhere. The reality, you are improving. You just don't actually see it in the grand scheme of things. You see it as like your day-to-day basis. So why don't you track it? Track your small wins so that you can see that you are improving. There's a track record, there's a statistic for it. Humans as a whole are driven to understand data, to look for data everywhere and in everything that we do. So if you put that into a data, put it into a spreadsheet, track what you're doing, make a list of everything that you're doing, then you can see your progress right there. You can't lie to yourself and say, oh, I didn't make any progress. Why am I studying all this time? Because I'm not doing anything. That's a lie, because you can see it on your paper that you have done something and you have made a lot of progress. You've studied 30 minutes a day. You can see your grades improving from maybe 12% into 35%. Even though you're not reaching your goal yet, that is still progress, and that is what you want to look for. So for this technique, you should try using checklists for daily goals, reflection notes at the end of the week, and reward systems to treat yourself after hitting the milestones. So tracking your progress will make it easier for you to stay motivated and see how far you've come from when you first started. Now let's talk about the long game mindset. This is where I really want you to shift your gears and immerse yourself. So you want to stop thinking of exams as individual battles that you need to win. You want to win the war. You don't want to just win a singular battle. The war in this case is your academic career. You want to start by viewing them as checkpoints. They're stepping stones that bring you closer to your ultimate academic success. When you look at it this way, your focus will naturally shift. You stop obsessing over the small little things. You don't want to look for quick fixes. You start paying attention in class, and you actually have sustainable progress with this because you pay attention to the sustainable progress itself. You've tracked what you're doing. You can see the progress you've made. You can see the changes that has happened since then. And here's the best part. By adopting this new mindset, you start to subconsciously evaluate your daily actions. Suddenly, something as small as studying for 30 minutes will actually be a bigger thing. You're not just seeing it anymore as like, oh no, I studied for 30 minutes today. You see it as like, oh, I actually studied for 30 times 7. I studied for 210 minutes this week. It becomes a bigger thing because it stacks up. You look at it in a grand scheme of things. One chapter today, another chapter tomorrow, and before you know it, you're already ahead. We're all moving towards something, even if the destination is not clear yet. All of these small efforts will create momentum, and that momentum is what you want to keep going. You don't want to just start it and then stop halfway through. You want to keep going, be consistent with it. Small things day by day. And it's perfectly fine if one of the days you have a setback. You realize that, oh, I actually can't study today, something came up. That's completely fine, because in the grand scheme of things, you've already put in the groundwork. You've already put in the basic needs that you need to do in order to grow your academic career. It's like tricking your brain, basically. Instead of facing overwhelming all-day study sessions where you study 15 hours a day, you break it down into smaller bite-sized tasks that feels easier to approach. And the more approachable it feels, the more likely you are to study, because it's less scary, and so you're not going to procrastinate. All right, before we wrap up, I want to say this one thing. It is okay if you have slipped up. If you had a setback, don't stress about it. Seriously, it's all part of the process. Everyone slips up, progress isn't linear, and that is completely normal. The goal here isn't to be perfect. That is the main thing about academic comeback. Everyone thinks that like, oh, I have to be perfect with this in order to get perfect grades. None of it is perfect. Nothing in this world will ever be perfect. So live with the change of it. Consistency may not look flashy. I know a lot of us feel like to get an academic comeback, to go from an E to an A star, you need this big grand thing, but really it's not. It's just consistency. Just studying 30 minutes a day, that's it. I study an hour a day in university and I get 95% plus in my exams. And I know that sounds amazing, like, whoa, what did she do to get 95%? Nothing. I just studied consistently. That is all I did. With study techniques, of course I use study techniques, but the main thing is me being consistent. Those little unglamorous moments of you showing up, they may not feel like a big thing. Your friends may not think of it as like a success thing. It may not feel like everyone's seeing your progress or whatever, but because you're tracking it, you see it as well. And no matter what, that is where the real progress will happen. You will be fine. Let me know in the comments if you've gone through this, or if you're struggling to stay consistent right now, or if you are being consistent right now. Keep each other accountable, keep yourself accountable as well, and thank you for keeping me accountable, of course. And let's work on this together. I'm rooting for you. Thank you guys. See you in the next one. Bye.